Hi everyone, trust you all are doing well. So what we're going to do in this one is we're going to set up our comments model, because under all the posts that we're going to have, we're going to allow the users to actually create a post. All right. So with that in mind, we're probably going to add a feature inside our post model to, if that user or that writer doesn't want to allow any comments, then to disable the comments as well, right? So we're going to be able to do that as well. So if the user, let's say this writer doesn't think, like Michelle Jones, doesn't want anyone to leave actually comments under her post, she can actually disable the feature and then just disable the comments right there, okay? But by default, we will allow the users to actually basically comment. Right, but anyway, enough of that. Right, so what we're going to do, let's just quickly set up our comments model. Now, if anybody, I just want to put this as a side note, if anyone maybe thought that why do I create the models and then I go through every model with its migrations, I set those up, and why don't I just go from one model to the migration and things like that? Right, now the reason I do, basically in this case, I've set up all my models like this. All right. Now, the reason why I do that is because if I set up my models, I kind of think of the whole application as a whole. So then I think of everything that I might need in this application. Obviously, you're going to miss something. You might add something later. But I'm thinking of the application as a whole, how I want to structure it and all that kind of stuff, just by me setting up my models. So then I can just determine, right, this is what I will need, this is what I will need, and then I can just think of the structure of the application as a whole. Then I go through all the models, set them up with the migration, and then after that, I usually create a database seeders to seed the database, and then I will start working on the front end, and then I will do the controllers with the routes and things like that. Okay. So if anyone is just questioning why I do it like this. Right, anyway, enough of that. So let's quickly go to our models and just set up our comment model right here. All right, so the first thing we're going to need is we're going to create a constant table, and we're going to equal that to basically the comments table. Right, now this comments right here, we're referring to, let's go to our database migrations. You see the comments migration file is referring to this comments schema name right there, okay? So if you're just wondering why we put this in there, because Laravel will basically look up this table inside the database. It's going to look for that schema in the migration file. Okay. Anyway, so this, now we need to do the protected table. All right. So this is the method that Laravel used to determine the table. Okay. So the protected table, we can just going to say self table. Right, so obviously you don't have to put the constant with the table right there. You could have just do a protected table with comments like this. Okay, you could have done it like that, but I'm just liking to use the constant because you will see how it will. When I try to reference something, it's just easier for me. Right, so the next thing that we want to do is protected fillables. All right, I will always use protected fillables, and in some cases protected guarded is 0, but as a teaching, I will use protected fillables. All right, presetting the protected guarded to an empty array to people that might be new to Laravel, that will be a bit dangerous, but be reckless a bit, because you can basically, if they don't follow all the necessary procedure, they can actually put some risk into the application. All right, so protect this function is just for the ID. Okay, and this will be an integer, and then we're just going to return this ID. Right, the next one is a public function. This one is basically for the body. Okay, and this will be a string, and then we're just going to return the body. All right, we're also going to add the excerpt as well. So let me just finish this one up. So if we just want a little snippet of the comment, okay, so let's do a public function, and this one is going to be the excerpt. All right, and this is going to be an integer. Okay, and then we're just going to do a limit. We just set it to 100. Okay, and this is a string, and then we're basically just going to return this. Actually, let me just, instead of this needs to be str string limit. Okay. We're not going to use any WYSIWYG editors to let the user just a plain text field, so we don't have to worry to strip the tags in this case. Okay, so we can just do that. Just make sure you import this in the top as well. Right. So if you guys wonder why I type out everything in a video as well, is because some users will like to see everything and follow the whole process. And if you don't want to, just skip ahead with the video as well. Right. So this body and limit. Come on, spell it quickly. Right, so now we got our limit in there. Now, I just want to show you this something. All right, just on top here. So if we actually do it, let's just do it in a view. Right, I've just chosen any view, actually. So let's say we receive the post, okay? So we're going to do this, post, and then we're just going to call on the excerpt like this, okay? Now, this will basically be that comment with, let's say, in this case, I'm just using a post right there, but let's just use the comment just to be relevant. A comment like this. All right. So if we do the comment excerpt like this, okay, by default, we're setting it to 100, but we can still decide in here what do we want to set it to, like 250 characters, 50 characters, or whatever. So it kind of gives you flexibility. So if you want to, you can set the amount, the limit here, but in the view itself, you can still change it here to 30, 300, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so I just wanted to leave that out there because that's what I will do later. Okay, so that's that. All right, so before I continue here, let's quickly create the contract interface because we're going to need that to actually set up the relationships correctly. Right, so we have that part. All right, so under your app folder, just create a new file and call it contracts. Like this, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new contract, and this one is going to be CommentAble PHP. All right. So what is a contract? The contract, you can think of it as an obligation or something that the model that is implementing the contract have to fulfill. And in this case, it will be an interface that the certain model needs to fulfill. All right. So let's quickly do that. If you're developing packages, you will normally see that you need to create actually a contract where all your interfaces go into and stuff. Okay. So let's quickly create a namespace for this. It's app/contracts. All right. And let's just create an interface. All right. And this one is going to be called CommentAble. So that's basically now an interface, and there's obviously a whole lot of methods that I want whatever model that implementing this interface have to fulfill. So in this case, if the post model implements it, it needs to fulfill this criteria, or let's say it's an article that allows comments or a video post that allows comments, it needs to implement this interface and it needs to have those methods inside it. All right. Now I just want to show you the naming convention for interfaces in this, let's say contracts, needs to be whatever the name is and then with the able attached to it. All right. So let me just quickly open a user model, just to the naming convention. If you want to create any, you will see extends authenticatable, right? As you can see, the user right here. Okay. So that's normally what, right, let me just actually go into that clause as well. That's not a good example because here is basically the contracts that's being fulfilled. This basically, if you go to the contract there, you will see it's an interface. As you can see, authenticatable. It's kind of Laravel's naming convention that they use for interfaces. They add the able at the end, and if you can see authorized or authorizable, you'll see the add just the able at the end. Okay. So obviously they keep it in smaller case letters for the able. This one right here, you can see the smaller case. So it's up to you, singular and with the able at the end. All right, so for me, I'm just going to do it like this. All right, so let's quickly create a couple of methods inside here for our contract. Right, the first thing that they need to have is let's quickly create a public function. They need to have titles. Okay, so all the contracts needs to have title, all the models, and public function. Let me just actually type it up because this will create actually a function. I don't want a function. So public function, this one here, they need to have the comments method. Okay, they need to have the comments method. Other one is, let me just do this. Copy it down. This would just be easier. Okay. Just give it some room. All right, the next one for the public function, they need to have the latest comments. Okay, and there needs to be an integer, and then we can add the amount. Okay, and then we can equal that to 5. So when we call on this latest comments part right here, you must just remember that if we call on the method, we will actually can specify the amount. By default, it's 5, but you can change it. Right, so next thing that we want to add is delete comments. This method, whatever model needs to have the delete comments. Okay, and it needs to have basically the comments relation. Okay, so that relationship needs to be set up as well. So why is this giving me an error? Okay, didn't pick up on my saving. Right, so it needs to have the comments relation. Okay, and then it needs to be basically a morph many. Let's see, morph many relationship right there. Right, so the next thing that we need is the public function. Just comment this one down. All right, so what it will have is as well is the commentable title. So commentable title. Right, it needs to have this. Right, and it needs to be a string like that. Okay, so basically this is the contract that whatever model that implements the commentable needs to fulfill. Right, so let's quickly carry on with our post model. So that's basically what I wanted to set up. Right, so let's quickly set up the relationship. So public function. All right, this is basically going to be that comments relation. Okay, let me just give it some room there so you guys can easily see. All right, this is commentable relation actually. Commentable relation like this. Right, and this needs to be a morph to. Morph to. Just make sure you import at the top as well. Okay, so class already imported right there. Okay, so we gave our commentable relation, and then we're just going to return this dot morph to. All right, this is going to morph to the commentable relation, and then we're going to have the commentable type. So this is basically the fields for our polymorphic relationship, and the other one will be the commentable ID. Like this. We can actually put the commentable ID in front, like that. Let's delete this. Right, so now we got that set up. Now the next thing we need is we need to basically create that public function, the CommentAble. Now this is going to make use of our commentable contract that we just created, CommentAble as it. Right, so just make sure you import that at the top as well. Okay, that contract of CommentAble. Right, and then we're just going to return this commentable relation without the parentheses, just like this. All right, so that's our model all set up. Now, the only thing that we still need to add to our comment model, you must remember, we created a method of a has author because we need to know who the author is. Okay, so now as you can see, now we can just use that interface instead of actually having to create all these methods inside our comments right here. All right. The next thing that we want to do is we've got our has author. All right. And the other one is we need to use the model helpers. All right. So let's move on. Let's go to our comments database. So database, migrations, comments table right here. Let's quickly set this one up. All right. So this is not going to be much in here. Right, so let's do a table. And this is going to be a text field. This is going to be the body. Okay. And the other one is going to be a table. This is going to be an integer. Come on. This is going to be the CommentAble ID. And the other one will be a string. Let's be CommentAble type. This. And then we're going to have the foreign key. So table, foreign ID. This one is going to be the author ID. Okay. And that is basically going to be constrained to the user's table. Right. Just remember the author ID, how we're bringing that in our comment model. You remember the has author, we got that author ID, the author relation for the, okay. So there we got it right there. Right, so now we've got our migration all set up. So the next thing that we're going to do is we need to implement that interface. All right, so we still need to implement basically that interface. So let's go to our app, models, post interface, because this needs to implement CommentAble interface. Now we will get a red underline to say that there's a whole lot of contracts that actually methods that the post is not fulfilling. All right, so that's what we're going to do in the next one. We're going to create a trade for basically to add like has comments. All right, and we're going to implement basically this interface. All right, so that's it from me, guys. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.